Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show.
What's going on with you?
What's going on with me? Well, I had a great weekend, not in Minnesota. I was at Lake Tahoe, which is, I've never been there before.
Neither have I.
But I was at a retreat, and the best way I can describe it is that I was meeting up with friends who I had not met yet.
So you're joining a cult.
we were joking about that, but no. We had full control over our schedule, so it was a lot of fun. But it was for sort of lifestyle goals. So as most people know, I have summers mostly off, and my wife has summers off, and that was by design. And I went through a coaching program, and these retreats are pretty nice because you're there for like 3 days, and you can work on your goals and stuff. So I listed some of the stuff I wanted to work on over the next 5 years. I talked to other people and got some really great feedback and brainstorming and stuff. It was just really cool. A lot of awesome conversations, and the location was pretty sweet, of course. So I went on a hike. I did go into the water and swam a little bit. It was super cold. It was like 66 degrees, but there were plenty of other people that were swimming too. Just takes some getting used to.
In Minnesota, I've seen it all.
Yeah.
At any temperature.
Yep. And unfortunately, the water was a bit too choppy in the afternoon, so we didn't get to go out on the water on some like kayaks and stuff, but a little bit of swimming was good. So that's basically what I did last week, so it was great.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun. How about you?
Yeah, I have been turning the production crank on my game and, making some rough estimates, and I don't think it's going to be out this year. If I'm being totally realistic, the schedule for like a normal human schedule, and not like trying to crack the whip or anything is just going to take time now. So we're just turning the production crank. So I'm commissioning art, I'm commissioning audio. That takes time. There's iteration involved. That just takes time. So I've actually sent checks to people, which is wild, like from my business account. So I sent checks to people. And then I've also had a bunch of people sign legal paperwork, which is wild. And that's all done now, which has been wild.
So it's really happening.
It's really happening.
Is what you're saying. Yeah.
It's really happening. So next on my list is I have a whole bunch of admin and like applications to send to Nintendo and Steam. Because I actually haven't done that part yet. I have a game. I just haven't I haven't sent it to the platforms that I intend to publish on. So I'm turning that crank. And all of this admin just takes forever. And it's not even game related. Really.
Yep.
Maybe like a tiny bit, but it's all like businessy things. Yes. And that'll be my cool link later, but I'll talk about some business stuff.
I think for estimating like a project like this, as you make progress, it's going to get clearer and clearer, like when the release date will be. But you probably won't know the release date until like 1 to 3 months out.
Yeah. My realistic, I'm still optimistic that I can get it out in 2025. Unlikely. My realistic take is that it's somewhere in the first half of 2026.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We get things out. And speaking of Steam, I bought Silksong on Steam, and it's awesome. And you should buy it too.
This is Hollow Knight Silksong, right?
That's right. Yeah, this is the sequel to Hollow Knight, as far as I know. And it's great. If you like Metroidvania stuff, you'll like this. It's a lot of fun. It's very well tuned. I have enjoyed it. The art and sound are amazing. It's just a gorgeous game.
Awesome. It's also on Xbox Game Pass, which I have, so I could play it for free on Game Pass on my console. So if you have Xbox, you should go definitely check that out.
Also, it works really well on Linux on like low powered devices.
So because you're actually playing this on your Linux laptop
with a Switch Pro controller.
Cool.
So it's working really well.
Oh, that's nice.
And apparently it was so popular, it broke Steam's distribution. for a time. Like a game, it like kudos to them. It's like one of the most popular releases in a very, very long.
That's awesome. Very, very nice. Should we move on to some of the news for the week of September 1st, 2025?
Yeah. The first thing on my list is a new minor version of ESLint with, it's got a number of fixes, which is always good, but a brand new rule that I haven't run into personally, but it is interesting that it is, a thing that's allowed to type, because I would never type this, but you can have an empty type parameter argument list. So what do I mean by that? So like, say I was typing like my thing, angle bracket, I was going to put a type parameter in and then have a closing angle bracket. Well, that could be empty.
Really?
And I had no idea that was even possible, but I'm glad we have a rule for it now, because if I saw that in the wild, I'd be like, what the heck? This is goofy looking. And certainly we'll have a link to the PR and the release that added this rule, but that's the interesting feature here, I think, in this release.
You think, so that must be possible only if all the parameters are optional, right?
Yeah,
because otherwise you would get an error that you are missing a type argument. So
you must.
That's interesting that it allows that syntax.
Yeah, no, I've never seen that in the wild, but I could definitely see a person being quite upset with code that showed up like that.
Yep. That's nice. Sweet. Sounds good. What else you got?
All right. Next up, Fresh 2.0 graduates to beta and adds Vite support.
That's Deno Fresh, right?
Yep, that's right, Deno Fresh. And per their blog post, these betas, everyone uses alpha beta kind of like, however, it's completely a meaningless term, but in their blog post, they say these are effectively release candidates. The architecture is now stable. The last big changes have landed. So this is just like showstoppers and bug fixes, that kind of thing. So if you are like, I'm hot to trot on Fresh, this would be like your signal to try it out. And cool things are coming. One is that they embrace the new environment API from Vite. This is like the way to do like different like build environments for like different runtimes. For example, if you're like running in a browser, you're running in Cloudflare workers, you're running in Node, yada, 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 yada.
Yep.
So there's a lot of information there in the Fresh docs on how to use that for both server and client-side code. They have hot module reloading in islands, which is super cool. I don't know how they did that, but that sounds like awesome. I might go scope their code because that seems relevant to something I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
They have 10x faster boot times, which is always good. They have out-of-the-box React aliasing. So a lot of times you are like, I don't want to use React and React DOM. I want to alias them to like Preact compat or something. They have that built in, so you can do that kind of thing without too much effort.
Nice.
So that's nice. They brought back the beloved head component from Fresh 1.x. This is a component to render elements into the head portion of the HTML document. So whenever you might need to do titles, H1s, that kind of thing, this is kind of a thing you might reach for. And they have a super slick script, Deno run, JSR, fresh in it. Super fast. So
nice.
Go check it out.
Definitely. They've got a migration guide. So if you're still using Fresh 1.0, but otherwise start fresh with Fresh 2.0. They've also got a new guide on deploying to Cloudflare workers, because obviously the default is to deploy to Deno deploy. But if you want to deploy to Cloudflare workers, they've got a new guide on doing that.
Environments API.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Next on our list is Void Zero just posted that Rolldown is now officially dropping CommonJS support. Now, that sounds scary. You can still use CommonJS in your code. It just means that inside of Rolldown, there's no more CommonJS.
That's right. So
to be super clear.
Yeah, it'll still bundle your code as CommonJS, but they removed all their cruft with CJS handling inside of Rolldown itself.
Yeah, and this is kind of, you're going to see this happening more and more now that all of the old Node that, only worked with Common is kind of being phased out.
That's
so
right.
Now we're just having Node that supports ESM, so it's making it a lot easier for things to support ESM, and there's now like a cross-play, like a way you can interoperate between Common and ESM that didn't exist before. So that's why you're seeing this I don't know, second wave of ESM support hit us after the initial like ESM spec.
Yep. That's right,
So,
because libraries, including Excalibur.js, have had to ship not only ESM, but also a common JS bundle. And that just adds to build complexity and cruft inside of like the code base doing different branches of code depending on ESM and CJS. So sometimes a lot of these actually come with optimizations for bootstrapping too. Like the bootstrapping is faster to like get the module up and running. And then tree shaking can also be much better when you drop CJS.
That's right.
Cool.
Next on my list, and this is kind of related to TypeScript, but we now have WASM support in Swift 6.2.
What?
This was announced at WWDC this year, which is huge as we're looking at like the web is winning. I think this is another ballot cast for the web is winning. Swift is now supporting WASM. And if you didn't know, Swift is open source. You can go take a look at it on GitHub. And if you also didn't know, Swift is the new language that the new Ladybird browser is being written in on top of their existing C++.
That's interesting. So this is that means that this is not just for like iOS apps, right? Because Ladybird is a desktop browser. That's cool. I actually didn't realize that you could write a Swift app not on iOS.
Yeah, and if you go take a look at their thing, they do support, like, they have documentation for like Linux, Mac, and Windows. So you can also write Swift for Windows.
Wow. They got to improve their marketing on that because I just associated Swift with iOS only.
Yep. Yeah, and to tie this back to TypeScript, if you like TypeScript, you'll like the syntax of Swift. It's very, very reminiscent. So
that's cool.
You will feel at home. So that's my tie back into TypeScript, and also WASM is for the web. I just thought that was a really interesting thing that we should talk about.
Nice. As a reminder, we have a reminder and a few security PSAs to get through here. But as a reminder, we talked about the TypeScript AI conference put on by Mastra, and that is November 6th, and it's in person in San Francisco. And I was seeing that they have a few slots left. They might be sold out by the time you hear this, but you should definitely go check it out if that's kind of your jam. We got a few PSAs, starting with sort of the easiest one. If you are using Vite, make sure you upgrade your packages because there were a couple CVEs that affected some of the packages, right? Do you have some details on that?
Yeah, there were some low sevs CVEs affecting the Vite dev server, and I think it was the 7.1x line, the 7.x line, 3.x line, and the 5.4x line. And there's some information here in the GitHub advisories about those. Let me go take a look. Oh, yes. So files sharing the same name with the public directory were bypassing the server file system settings. So it was a way of getting at information, but it's a dev server. So I think the severity is low in terms of exploitability. I think the GitHub Sev mirrors the federal one, the United States one that CISA, that's right. They mirror the CISA, but they're not exactly the same, but they try to be. So these are both like Sev 2.3. It's a low exploitability because you'd have to attack someone running a dev server on their machine while they're doing dev. So I think, yeah, but still, go ahead and update your packages.
Yeah, that's actually a pro tip. I don't know. Are you subscribed to the CISA mailing list where they send out the alerts? Yeah, me too. So if you are in a DevOpsy role, or even if you're a full stack developer and you manage your own like deployment environment and stuff where these packages are being built and stuff, you should subscribe to the CISA mailing list. That's CISA, and I'll include a link to that in the show notes because they send updates on vulnerabilities in lots of different software. It's probably not going to get to the detail of NPM packages, but sort of more generally, it keeps you aware of all the bad stuff that's going on.
Yeah. And if you want to be very sad, your network hardware running in your house probably has some CVEs, so update your firmware.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The big one that you probably have already heard of unless you've been living under a rock, but attackers have hijacked like a dozen or so NPM packages that have 2 billion with a B weekly downloads in a spear-phishing supply chain attack. And it's bad, y'all.
It is.
It's pretty bad.
It's bad. So one thing is that a lot of the packages have been taken offline, but the thing with this one is that it's really insidious, and so there are packages that have not been reported yet that have been compromised. So we're still sort of seeing some aftershocks of this one. Now, one thing to note, and I'm just quoting from the Bleeping Computer article on this, which you should definitely just go take a look at. But they said that there are specific criteria that has to be met for an app to have been affected, which significantly decreases the impact. So this includes that you would have had to do a fresh npm install between 9 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Eastern when the packages were compromised. So whatever that date exactly was, you can check the article. And during that time, a package lock.json has to have been created, and those vulnerable packages would have to be direct or transient dependencies. So in other words, your package lock.json, if it was regenerated during that time frame, then you could be affected. But otherwise, you're not likely to be affected. Now, just keep in mind that that includes your local machine, but also your CI/CD installs. So if you had PRs going in, like inside of your pipelines during that time, those could have been affected. Unless you're using package lock.json and you're not messing with it during the CI/CD, which I don't think you should be.
Yeah, you should be doing npm CI.
npm CI, right, is the command you want to use, because that will not regenerate a package lock.json. Okay. So there was a few things that were affected, like Chalk is probably one of the biggest ones. There were some other really big ones, but DuckDB was also affected, their npm packages. So that came out a few days later. So that wasn't detected right away.
Yep. Now, it looks like this might have been like a pretty well-funded attack, because it looks like they had very specific spear-phishing targets, like targeting big maintainers and stuff. And the malware itself appears to be crypto drainer type stuff. So they're looking for crypto wallets that live, or crypto APIs that live on the window, doing some fancy regex to find and replace whatever wallet was there in the destination with their wallet, the attacker-controlled wallets. So it looks like the attackers didn't really get a huge payout based on the amount of effort that appears to have gone into this attack. If this had gone unnoticed, certainly I think the impact would have been a lot higher. But I think everyone did the right thing after, as far as I could tell, like being compromised. They reported it as fast as they could. They raised the flags as fast as they could, and it really limited the impact. Now we're just dealing with the cleanup here to make sure that there's no more malware hanging out in CI/CD or in your local machine.
That's right. So my takeaway is don't use crypto wallets, which I don't.
Don't do crypto on your dev machine where you're doing npm install.
Don't do that.
Have a if you're gonna do crypto, have your OPSEC needs to be so good, because there's been so many wallet drainer malwares out there. So I feel like you just got to be
use a
so
dedicated machine, or use like a virtual machine or something like that.
Yeah, go check your wallets, by the way, if you're a crypto person.
That's right.
You might have lost some money. And some cool things that, like, we were talking offline about features that might have been good. And, hat tip to Josh Goldberg, his conversation in Blue Sky. But a lot of us are using like Renovate or Dependabot. And this can be a vector for these types of, like, there's a patch version that specifically, it doesn't have to be crypto, but like has a malware payload in it from a compromised package. Having a package cooldown feature, like, where new packages have to be around for a while before you adopt them.
Yes.
And I think that's a good mitigant against this kind of stuff, especially for like these types of supply chain attacks where they will be noticed. The attacker's just hoping that they're not noticed for a while. So like if you have like a cooldown feature, that might help mitigate some of these package compromises as they get identified and taken down. So those packages will not have elapsed that cooldown. So they'll be short-lived packages.
Yep, that's a really good tip. there's a whole defense in depth conversation here because the initial attack vector was an email that was sent to maintainers from an npm.help domain, and it looked, exactly like you would get an email about like, you don't have two-factor auth enabled, your account is going to be locked until you do that at this certain date. So obviously there was like a sense of urgency, and maintainers went to the URL and it grabbed their username and password as they typed it in, and that's how the attack was initiated. But like, I use Hey email, HEY, and what's nice about that is that it screens in any unknown senders, their domain. So I've already listed the npmjs.com domain, which is the official sending domain for npm emails. This would have just been caught immediately as a red flag in my screener, and then I would have been like, what is this? And it would have said like, this looks like it could be spam. So there's things that email providers can do better to try to prevent some of these phishing attacks. But I think just building it into the system itself would have been helpful.
Yeah, and always treat email as well as incredibly suspect. Never click on links, even if they look real. Like, there's plenty of times where I'm like, I'm going to go log in separately, and confirm this message. And like, I almost got once from an Amazon phish attempt, like it was styled to look like Amazon, and the phone number in the email was the attacker's phone number. So I called them with that phone number, and then only while talking to them did I realize that this was like, so I almost got. But like, they said some things that I'm like, oh, okay, I got here.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, okay.
Yep. They want you to send payments, or they want your information without like...
Yeah, they wanted they immediately were like, well, can you give us your login? I'm like, oh, that's a thing that they will never ask for.
Nope. Man, yeah, gotta be on the defense 100% of the time. Okay, so that was the big NPM supply chain attack. There was also a GitHub supply chain attack in GitHub Actions. So this was something called GhostAction, and they were able to compromise, well, this says 3,325 secrets, including Python, NPM, Docker Hub, GitHub tokens, Cloudflare, AWS keys, and there was an initial project that was compromised called FastUUID, and GitGuardian found it. They discovered that it was compromised, and then they discovered a whole bunch of other repositories had been compromised. But basically, it says here, the attack involved leveraging compromised maintainer accounts to perform commits that added a malicious GitHub Actions workflow file that triggers automatically on push or manual dispatch. Once triggered, it reads secrets from the project's GitHub Actions environment and exfiltrates them to an external domain under the attacker's control via a post request. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. If anything can be like a silver lining here, is that the payload of the malware is not obfuscated. So it's very clear that it's exfiltrating it to a attacker controlled address. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, let's echo out the secret key and let's curl it to a dangerous address.
Yep. And if you were part of this, you would have already been notified by GitHub. So yeah. So this should not like affect you personally. It's just like this is an attack that happened basically the same time as this other one.
Now, if you were affected, I mean, you probably already know to do this, but rotate your credentials.
Yep. And, best practice for security ops is usually to rotate secrets on a cadence anyway, like regardless. Although I will say that is a huge pain in the butt if it's not automated.
No. Yeah, there was some interesting discussion offline with some of my coworkers around this specific one where, and it might not have been this hack, but around this type of like token theft thing using canary tokens to discover compromises. When attackers try to use a canary token, it triggers a alarm and allows you to like have greater insight into, compromises. It's like a honeypot credential.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Well, should we do some community highlights?
Yeah, we should. Rob Palmer had a great post on Blue Sky about some TypeScript nostalgia. Did you know that TypeScript 1.5 is now 10 years old.
Wow.
Do you feel old? I do.
Yes.
And it was a big deal. This is when we got ES6, the first ES modules. We got tsconfig, which feels like it's been there since the beginning, but it wasn't. Because you remember, I used to use makefiles to build the TypeScript project. We had namespace, we had experimental decorators, all that good stuff. And he links to the original TypeScript blog post on 1.5. It's very entertaining in a historical context. It's short and sweet, so go check it out and just remember fondly experimental decorators or curse their name.
Someone in the comments is like, I hope the TS decorator phase will not last as long as the CJS one.
Agreed. When are we going to get those decorators?
But yeah, TypeScript has been around a long time.
It has been. It's got some staying power. It's like, if it was just a fad, this is a long one.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Dr. Axel's Corner. He is still on his learning web development tear. He's got a couple good articles. Again, if you're like new in career or just as a refresher, learning about front-end frameworks, like what does that mean? What are the types of things that you'll see in front-end frameworks? Going over some terminology, like people throw around a lot of like jargon in the industry, especially like front-end. What does that even mean? It means it runs in a browser versus like back-end, which is where it's running on a server in the cloud somewhere or in your basement, in my case. But a lot of these front-end frameworks are just ways of doing fancy data and HTML combination in whatever way is most pleasing to you. He goes through a Preact example of how to set up like kind of a modern Preact app using like JavaScript import maps, which is how you do ESM in like a vanilla JavaScript sense. If you haven't been familiar with that, you haven't used import maps, go take a look at them. It's script type import map, but it roughly creates that import name that you're so used to using in your editor tooling. It's like the official way to do that. So go check that out. And then he has another one about NPM packages and bundling, which is just a great primer. If you are new to this world and you're like, okay, what are all of these things? What are the terms? Like, how does this work? Why do we have a build step for the web now, for better, for worse? And how does the package JSON work? What are the different things in there? And what do those terms mean? Like dev dependencies, dependency scripts, and, script type. So check it out.
Sounds good. Next up, the maintainer of Immer.js, Mark Erickson, has teased a PR that will be bringing some pretty nice performance improvements to Immer. So as a reminder, that is for immutability. So you might be using it with Redux. If you're, still using Redux, Immer is one of those libraries that kind of go hand in hand with that. You might just be using Immer by itself. So anyway, Mark was teasing some cool performance enhancements. So those would be coming in the next version of Immer. And he's got a benchmark also, like a perf testing benchmark system where you can see how Immer performs against other libraries.
Yeah. And part of the value prop here is immutability kind of comes at a performance cost because you have to copy things around. So this is huge. And in fact, I'll probably be like looking at Immer's implementation here to see if there's any like fun learnings that I could also take with me.
All right.
Another one, you might be owed money if you are an author. If you take a look at the Meta Piracy case, you might be owed money because they used pirated books to train their AI. Womp womp.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. And Josh Goldberg talked about their Learning TypeScript book had been included on this pirated list. So Josh, you might be owed money. So go cash in, hopefully, and maybe you'll be able to retire off of that settlement. It looks like Dan Abramoff's Just JavaScript is also on there as well. So
man,
maybe you can cash in and extract some wealth from Meta.
So in order to make it easier, it looks like there is a little database that you can actually search for to see the books that were used.
Excellent. Cool. Next up on the community highlights, I have a library that Josh Goldberg created called Wi-Fi Share Link, which if you have been stymied by trying to create a Wi-Fi sharing link for like your own personal Wi-Fi or your business, check it out. It's a tiny little NPM package to generate Wi-Fi share links. And fun fact, I have a QR code with a Wi-Fi share link in a picture frame in my house so that people, when they come over, they can just log on to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So that's a cool hack.
That's a good idea.
You should go and take this and run with it.
That would have saved me the 30 plus minutes I spent when I went over to my grandparents' house, and my laptop did not have their Wi-Fi code. So they took out a little notebook with all their, like, they have all their passwords and like a pen and paper notebook, and it was not the right password. And what I discovered, pro tip, if you have someone there who has an iPhone, and I have an Android phone, so you can't share directly, but what you can do is you can go on the iPhone, go into the Wi-Fi settings, and you can actually see the password. You have to unlock it, but you can tap on the password and you can see it. And so that's how I got it onto my laptop. So I took my grandma's phone and I was able to get the password, and it was a password that was not written in their book. So we added it to their book, but I think this would have been, a lot faster.
I love that for us. I love that.
All right. We've got a couple other library watches, actually a few other library watches. Eric, you like finite state machines. I think
I do.
We know this about you. Listeners might know this about you. There is a new type-safe finite state machine library called Machinist Core, and it's published on JSR. So it's got a lot of great documentation.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the huge problems with creating type-safe state machines is you need to know a lot upfront in order for the type completion to help you at all. So you need to define the whole machine at build time, right?
Sure.
Because if you're defining the machine dynamically, there's no way it can help you at build time with the states. But this has, by far, the best DX I've seen to date for type-safe state machines in TypeScript. And I've written a couple bad ones. So I definitely would check this out if that is in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, especially if you're doing game dev, but this also goes beyond game dev if you need to do some more advanced logic that you're tired of switch statements and if else blocks.
I have a rubric for when you should reach for a state machine, and that's if you have more than 2 Booleans in your app that control the state of something.
Mm-hmm.
Odds are, if you have 3 Booleans, you now have 6 possible states. And are all of those valid?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not. So it starts to become quickly intractable if you are starting to add multiple Booleans to something to keep track of state. That's when a state machine becomes useful.
Fantastic. The next library, this is something that maybe is relevant for folks that are from a more enterprisey background that might be even perhaps using Eclipse IDE. Well, I didn't know this. Maybe you did. But Eclipse has a modeling framework that is, I think it's, you write your models with XML, but it is a way to do an object. It's sort of like an ORM, basically, but you're defining it through XML. Well, this enterprising developer has released a framework for TypeScript that can take these Eclipse models and transform them into types. And because you might not know anything about Eclipse modeling, he's actually also created a Visual Studio extension to help you build the model. I was sort of conversing with them over Blue Sky. You might need to be a little bit more familiar with Eclipse modeling, but it's not too hard to learn. If you are sort of used to ORM mapping, where you need to define a schema for something, it looks very much like that. But he was talking about some really nice use cases for this to do model-driven development. And since it is built on top of Eclipse modeling, there's a whole visualizer and tooling, for that. So this just helps you bring it instead of just using it for Java or whatever. You can use it and consume it in TypeScript. They've got a sort of detailed Reddit post on sort of their inspiration for this, and they talk a lot about this idea of containment and sort of what problems this solves. So this could still be, something that's fairly niche, but they obviously put a lot of effort into this and they're, pretty excited about it. So so there might be developers who need this type of thing, and you should go check it out. It's called TMF.
Time makes files.
No, I don't think that's what it is.
No, I don't think so either. All right. Next up on the library watch, there is a new library from Blue Sky user Pix Ltd, or maybe it's Pixel Ltd. They created a tiny mini translate utility for TypeScript so that you can do TypeScript language translations for your app. And it's a tiny little thing, and go check it out. I think the source is just extremely, I think it might even be one. Yeah, it's one file. So if you want like the smallest possible translation library, check out their little library here. And if you don't need any bells and whistles, this looks like a fun little thing.
Yeah.
We got some feedback.
Woohoo!
Azat, famous for writing lots of ESLint things, including Josh Goldberg's favorite ESLint plugin, Perfectionist, which sorts your imports, props, types, and enums in alphabetical order, resolving all debates of import order. It can just be automated, and you win. When it's automated, you win. That's the rule. But Azat reached out to us and sent us a whole bunch of cool things that he maintains, including Perfectionist, De Morgan, which simplifies complicated Boolean expressions, which if you've ever looked at like someone's PR and they're like, what the heck are you doing here? De Morgan is super useful. And that's referencing, I think it's De Morgan's laws in Boolean arithmetic. So that's why it's called De Morgan. You can talk about, they have a plugin called Token Limit. They have icons, an icon theme to adapt your color scheme in VS Code. They have To Do Doctor, which I need because I have some ancient Egyptian to-dos that were written at the time of the pyramids. And this is a thing that analyzes your comments and the age and the growth of your to-dos. Like, are your to-dos growing over time or are they decreasing over time?
The one I'm interested in that he mentions is called Actions Up, because we had just talked about that GitHub Actions supply chain attack. And the advice has always been to make sure that you pin your GitHub Actions to SHA commits.
That's right.
Instead of version tags. And that's exactly what this does. So it can do interactive updates. So you can run Actions Up and it will, if you're using those mutable tags, it will find the commit that those relate to and update your workflow files to pin all of your actions. So helps prevent those supply chain attacks, because those mutable tags can be modified. I can push a new tag to Git and I can point it to another commit, right? So that's an easy way to do a supply chain attack on GitHub Actions.
Yeah. Yeah. You might think, oh, the tag should be safe. It should be. It isn't.
Nope.
I actually had this happen to me, not a supply chain attack, but I did have something change underneath me. It was self-inflicted. Our team had pinned to main, which is well known to be the most consistent ref. We know main had a breaking change and it broke underneath us and we didn't realize, and it took us like 5 hours to figure it out. Definitely do not pin to main, pin to a commit.
Yes.
This has been a public service announcement.
That's right. So you can find all of Azat's work at github.com/azat-io. So thanks, Azat, for giving us some feedback. And hopefully we can point people to your work because you're doing great work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Should we end on a community joke of the week?
Let's do it.
Okay. I saw this from silvereagle.dev on Blue Sky. Sometimes, when I'm almost having a good day, I just turn on strict mode in TypeScript and let it remind me that I'm nothing more than a sinner in the hands of an angry linter.
Pure silver. It was so good.
That's right. Cool. You got some cool links?
I do. I came across a fun little library called 2D Geometry, which implements a whole bunch of useful 2D math. So like if you are in the space of games, like me, this might be useful to you. Otherwise, this has a whole bunch of useful things for like matrix multiplication in JavaScript, or doing a shape drawing, or doing like, oh, I need to do this spatial thing maybe for a map app or like a location app. This might be a thing to look at. Yeah, take a look.
That's cool.
My other cool link is a YouTube video from a famous indie game dev, Mrs. But they have a video about the business side of making games. And in fact, it's very much not game related. It's kind of a good primer on things to think about if you're starting your own business. You can just like, bleep out game development in there and just like any kind of business that you're doing, especially like digital goods like I am.
Yeah. Fun fact. I actually met someone at this retreat who was an amateur game dev, and they did Unity development. And they were there because they had just quit their job and they're kind of on a sabbatical. And they're wondering, can I make a game and make money with it as like my next thing, like my next phase in life? Can I just become an indie game dev? So I gave him all the resources. And it's also funny, he's also a full stack TypeScript developer. So I think he'll be checking out the podcast. But shout out to you, Ryan. Go check out this YouTube video because this is exactly what we were talking about together, how to make a business out of indie game dev. Cool. Since I was so busy this last week, I don't have like a ton of cool links, but there is one cool thing, a cool read, I should say. I brought a book with me on the plane and I finished it during the trip. And it's Roger Martin's book called A New Way to Think. And it's really, really nice because if you're not familiar with Roger Martin, he's like a business strategy guru. But what I like about Roger is that he's actually a practitioner of business strategy. So he worked at Monitor, which is one of the OG consulting firms. And that's where Michael Porter's 5 Forces came out of. Michael Porter used to work at Monitor, I believe, or one of those consulting companies. And he worked with Roger. And so Roger's been working with Procter & Gamble, P&G, since forever and helped them with their business strategy. So he has a lot of thoughts on how to win in the marketplace. And I read his previous book called Playing to Win. It was really good. But this one goes beyond that. So it actually includes stuff from Playing to Win, but it basically takes his whole body of work, all of his essays and articles that he's published over time in the Harvard Business Review, and puts them into chapters organized around different models from what traditional business models have been. So that could be anywhere from like, here's how to think about marketing in a better way. Here's how to think about customer retention in a better way. Here's how to think about revenue forecasting in a different way, and all sorts of different things. So it's really nice because it kind of wraps up all of his thinking into one book. So if you only read one Roger Martin book, A New Way to Think is a good one. And it only took me about 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6 hours to get through. So it's not like super, super long, which is really nice.
Yeah, this is a great read, and I recommend Roger Martin's stuff. I've been talking to a lot of folks in a lot of places, and the word strategy is really thrown around inappropriately. What a lot of people call strategy is actually just planning.
Yep.
So yes. I've included on the show notes just like a really great, like short YouTube video about what the difference between a plan and a strategy is. And I have shared this to almost everyone I've ever worked with. And it's a fight, because a lot of executives participate in planning and they don't participate in strategy. And it's really hard from the bottom up to influence strategy. But you got to fight that fight. Yeah. So, but I do recommend, especially if you're doing your own business or you are like an individual contributor at a leadership level, like you have the ear of leadership and they're throwing around the word strategy and you're like, all right, is this strategy or is this a plan?
It's not strategy if everybody in the room is comfortable with what's happening. It's not strategy if that's the case. And in fact, in the book, he actually has a checklist of things. It's like, is your organization practicing strategy or is it practicing planning? And he has a checklist of like, here's what's happening if your situation is like this. So you can go through and be like, check, yes, no, yes. And then you can figure out what's actually happening. Cool.
Awesome.
What are your takeaways for the episode before we go?
My long goodbye is pin your dependencies wherever they are. Mm-hmm. I think pinning your dependencies, I learned that from like a selfish point of view because I was sick of having projects break as time elapsed, because inevitably patch versions would introduce breaking changes, which it shouldn't, but it does. Humans aren't perfect, and Semver is an imperfect system for humans to use. Mm-hmm. One thing that I'm going to be looking at very closely is that package cooldown. Now, one thing I didn't think about while we were talking about it, there is kind of a double-edged sword there. Like, what if there's a really critical vuln that has just lived in the package for a while and then it starts getting exploited in the wild? You kind of want that update as fast as possible. And that'll buffer that, which, you're kind of darned if you do, darned if you don't right now with package cooldown. But maybe it's better than getting pwned with a patch update.
Right.
Maybe having like a CVE in your software that's been out in the wild for a while is better. Who knows? That might be a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. We've been seeing these more and more. Someone on Blue Sky was saying like it feels like this has been happening not just like for NPM but like just more in general, and I think that's been true. And you can even see that just by reviewing our episode show notes, because anytime there's like a security PSA that's related to web dev, we try to include it so people are informed. And that's been happening more and more. It's almost like it's becoming its own segment, is like the security corner. Like what's new in web dev security this week. So like we've talked about JSR and sort of Deno's approach to like a security first registry. And it checks a lot of the boxes that help prevent supply chain attacks. Like one of those is like verified uploads from GitHub Actions, where it verifies the checksum that matches so that you can't just randomly publish something. It also uses an OAuth token flow, not like an API key. So attackers can't easily just steal OAuth tokens. Like they actually have to go through an OAuth flow to publish a package. So hopefully, I don't know what we'll see. Like, I don't know if NPM needs to be rewritten from the ground up, or if we're going to see enterprises moving more towards things like JSR that are kind of built with that security first architecture, or what's going to happen. I don't know, but it feels like something needs to happen, because we can't just, this does not seem tenable, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do like the OAuth flow. It does have a major downside in like the convenience of automated publishing. Mm-hmm. Now there are some ways to make that work.
Well, I do that with my JSR package, and the way that it works is it's installed as a GitHub app. So that goes through the OAuth flow. You just do it once, and then once it's installed on your repo, it is connected to your JSR account. So it's actually turns out to be less work, because remember, for NPM, and even I've done NuGet package publishing, you do have to rotate the API tokens every so often. Like it forces you to. But with JSR, I don't have to. So long term, it's actually less work.
Well, that's true. I guess, yeah, I was thinking from the convenience of like being able to shoot a key at anything. But yeah, no, I think I agree. Like having the OAuth flow is like a net positive.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, it is installed as a GitHub app, and you can't do that for everything, right? So, yeah.
No, not sponsored, but if you're like, okay, what can I do right now in the like package management space? So if you use like Go, Java, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, .NET, you should definitely take a look at socket.dev, because it sits on your dev machine as kind of like a proxy to all of these package managers, and kind of acts like a first line of defense at the developer attack vector. So like when the developer is developing. So again, not sponsored, but it's definitely a thing that I use in my personal development. So like if you just are doing, you know, your own development on your own machine, not as part of a business, it's free. Protect yourself, yo.
Yep.
But it definitely helps with this like supply chain attacks against developer machines as they're installing things. So definitely take a look.
Cool. Yeah. Actually, I will take a look at that. Sounds good. All right. You ready to say goodbye now?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to TypeScript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronigus.com, and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.